Oh boy, this episode is probably gonna get me in a lot of trouble, possibly even deported from Taiwan, because I'm willing to bet that by the end, the comments will be riddled with baseless claims of me being a CCP spy, resulting in my 国籍规划 applications being torn up, thrown in the trash, and my Taiwan 身份证 a distant memory of the past, and possibly 有可能 even being listed as an unwelcome 老外, and a potential threat to national security, resulting in them kicking my ass out the country, because what I'm about to say is pretty damn serious, yo. But for the sake of my family having a potentially much better future in a country I've already spent 20 years in, I'm gonna make a very dangerous mistake and come out and say it. 民进党我不知道在冲啥。3 days ago, a State Department staffer from Trump's first term published an article that said some really harsh but very true things. That the DPP government screwed up a lot of stuff, especially their relationship with Trump, and he specifically called out Taiwan's president and vice president. Now this article is the most vicious, most unforgiving set of words I've ever seen. So let's hope they don't cancel my ass again, 准备在爆米花 cause it might be your very last chance, because 事情真的很大条咯。Okay, so for those of you who aren't from Taiwan, lately there's been a very epic trend of anyone who criticizes the ruling party on the internet, gets shit on really bad, gets called a CCP op, and has their social media completely hate bombed, with all sorts of rhetoric of them not loving Taiwan. This is very similar to Republican McCarthyism in the 1950s in America, and after about 5 years of that communist witch-hunting hysteria, America had enough, and the Democrats ended up running Congress for nearly 30 years. And that was just the Senate. Yo, they maintained a House majority for 40 years. Shit. The Taiwanese netizen version of McCarthyism has been going on for a long minute. And after the 2024 Lee Fire-Yuan elections and the most recent epic Bamiyan fail, it seems the outcome of McCarthyism is quite similar. So to prove anyone from thinking this article's author was bought by the CCP or is a CCP spy, let me first introduce his background.
This is a self-governing island. We can have a one China policy and say that Taiwan is a part of China, but everyone knows that that is a lie, knows that Taiwan is a separate country, a very different place from China, and that it's a place that China repeatedly threatens to invade and is now having this full dress rehearsal of a blockade plus attack. So it's, just bizarre that China runs around, says it's going to broker a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia, is engaged in diplomacy between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and is sort of pretending or trying to pretend to be a global player, and then is in fact just threatening a democratic, peaceful neighbor that just wants to be left alone.
Entering Christian Whiton, who directly said Taiwan is a country on American national television, is the author of this article. Now let's get some things clear. Firstly, he is not a Trump staffer. He was a State Department advisor during both Bush and Trump's administration. He's always been a Republican, and he's always been a fucking China hawk. He probably hates the CCP a lot more than a lot of Taiwanese do.
Then I'd say, if that's direct, then there's also an indirect way to counter China's political warfare, and that is to allow senior officials from Taiwan, a fellow democracy, and a key partner in the Pacific to visit. I mean, crazy. We've sat down and hashed out deals with Iran that is a country we don't have diplomatic relations with, technically. North Korea, our president has met with their leader 3 times, and every previous administration has had prolonged diplomatic discussions over nuclear weapons and other issues. So we don't have diplomatic relations with them, but we meet pervasively. And then with Taiwan, where we have this artifice from the one China policy, it would not be the end of the world, and I think it would certainly be appropriate if their president wants to come and have meetings in Washington, D.C., if their foreign minister and others, they should be able to come here and not under the artifice of a transit stop on their way to Haiti or one of the dwindling numbers of countries that they have relations with.
In a public speech 5 years ago, he even thought Taiwan's president should visit the United States. Simply put, he's always been very supportive of Taiwan. He's a good friend of this country. So for those who want to accuse him of being a CCP spy or being bought by the CCP or not loving Taiwan, hey, what he's done for Taiwan as a country in America is actually quite a lot, yo. Simply put, he's Taiwan's homie.
For the longest time, there was a question of whether the Taiwanese would fight. If they were attacked militarily, if Beijing doused the country in hundreds of missiles, thousands of missiles. I mean, if you talk about the time it would take to get a carrier group, for example, out to the South China Sea, it's variable. You know, would the Taiwanese last even that long? And then set aside the military question. What about the political one? Are they eventually going to give in to Beijing's bullying and accept some sort of political union with China? One country, two systems, maybe? What we've seen in Hong Kong, I think, disproves those concerns, or certainly undermines them. You know, Hong Kong, even more than Taiwan, was supposedly the place that just cared about money. And as long as they had some veneer of one country, two systems, not being completely subsumed by the mainland, they would be fine. We've seen that's not true. We've seen that Hong Kong, money-obsessed, capitalist, cares a lot about the political freedoms they have, and they're not willing to give them up willy-nilly.
Now, when it comes to the Asia-Pacific region, my man Christian is a diplomatic expert. So that's enough about him. Now that you know who he is, remember that 4 years ago, he thought that Taiwan would have to fight for its freedom. But coming up in this next part, although he does mention it again, you'll start to see that he's starting to waver in his belief that Taiwan will actually do so. So, get that 爆米花 ready, and hopefully 不会代志大条咯。
Of all of the countries that have seen their fates altered negatively by President Donald Trump's second term and its budding American renaissance, Taiwan ranks near the top of the list. Its government has created a nearly perfect case study for how not to handle the post-globalist United States. The tariff hike came on the heels of the recent humiliating cancellation of Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te's visit to the United States, reportedly decided by Trump himself.
This article is brutal, yo, and pay close attention to the first paragraph where he talks about Trump's own decision. Now, this part is very important because ultimately there was a catastrophic Minjindang event that I think directly influenced Trump's decision to deny President Lai transit privileges within the United States.
Some in Taipei have said that Lai was advised by friends with ties to Trump not to attempt the call. That in itself is a problem. Such advisors gave bad advice, perhaps because they lacked real access to Trump. Lai should have had the judgment to let Trump himself decide whether or not to take a congratulatory call. Instead, Lai issued a pro forma statement through a spokesman. This action struck some of those in Washington who follow Taiwan as remarkably different than the seeming joy Taiwanese officials expressed over the inauguration of Joe Biden as president 4 years earlier.
Now imagine if your ex-boyfriend called you for an hour on your birthday while your current boyfriend just sent you a simple happy birthday text message. Which boyfriend would you think cares about you more?
Fuck.
Now, where this was a bad decision made by President Lai's team, they're about to make an even worse one.
DPP attempted in July to recall 24 opposition Kuomintang KMT members of the legislature. The DPP failed in each case, a public rebuke unprecedented in Taiwanese political history. While DPP officials blame grassroots activists for starting the recall effort, it was advocated and managed in part by Lin Yuchang, the party's since-resigned Secretary General, and Ker Chien-ming, the party's legislative caucus whip. The failure underscores a perception that Lai and his DPP are in trouble with the electorate and unable to address basic voter concerns, hoping instead that sounding hawkish on China and the opposition KMT's dubious business ties to China and soft on Beijing reputation will sustain the DPP. Absent is any real debate within the DPP about critical issues for business, such as immigration liberalization for temporary residents, overregulation of banks and insurance companies, and the cost of energy.
Fun fact, Minjindang has been failing miserably at solving our livelihood issues, and Whiton points this out very precisely. I've lived in this country for nearly 20 years, and during nearly half of that under Minjindang, housing prices have reached an insanely high level, yo. And when my mother, who's retired and sits quite comfortably in America's upper middle class, wanted to sell her house stateside and buy a house in Taiwan, I very quickly told her, No. Wait. Because even with the money she made from selling her house, she wouldn't be able to afford anything near comfortable in Taiwan's housing economy. It's that fucking bad.
Taiwanese voters elevated Xiao to the vice presidency in 2024. Most analysts who follow Taiwan and Washington believe that Lai defers to her on policy toward the United States. This is a significant part of Taipei's problem with Trump. Like all Taiwanese representatives in Washington since the United States terminated formal relations in 1979, Xiao was impeded by her inability to function as a real ambassador would. But that was not the only problem. She is easily recognizable as part of the clique that hates Trump and all of his policies. Throughout her tenure, she was most at ease with what one might call the human rights industrial complex in Washington, the archipelago of people and organizations ranging from International Republican Institute to the National Endowment for Democracy, claiming to be both Democrat and Republican, but more properly seen as part of globalist uniparty in the Washington swamp that views Trump as the biggest threat to democracy. Trump has sought to defund these globalist organizations.
And here is another terrible decision by President Lai's team, following wrong diplomatic advice. It ain't no secret that his VP belongs to the liberal camp, which is fine, but the organization she chose to participate in, while America hates Trump in their bones. It's like going back to the ex example. If your current boyfriend sent you birthday wishes, but his friends really hate you and always talk shit behind your back, what would you think?
You bitch!
The presence of Xiao in Washington did not make much sense during the 2 years that Democrats controlled the White House and both houses of Congress. Her joy toward the Biden administration alienated Republicans, on whom it will always fall, to deliver real help for Taiwan, and especially on arms sales, and to advocate strong policy toward China generally. An unsourced claim about Xiao by Taiwan's president's office saying she was named in international media as one of Washington, D.C.'s most influential ambassadors is plainly ludicrous. Today, with Republicans in control of all of Washington led by Trump at the White House, it makes even less sense for people who think like Xiao to guide Taiwan's relations and represent its image. She has not condemned or alienated Trump specifically, but there is little doubt she would have preferred a second Biden term and has no political or personal avenue to relate to Trump or his top aides.
It seems like while serving as a diplomat in the US, she didn't really maintain a balanced relationship between the Democratic and Republican parties and showed her liberal ideology way too obviously.
What Trump officials see is a DPP-led government beholden to lefty cultural issues like denuclearization and transgenderism, indifferent to U.S. business, unserious about defense, and unwilling to close a trade deficit. Taipei is aware of its trouble with Trump, but efforts to change the dynamic are pathetic. In May, Taiwan's representative office in Washington hired Ballard Partners at a rate of $60,000 per month for strategic advocacy and government relations. At first glance, it might seem wise to hire the Trump-friendly lobbying firm that recently employed Attorney General Pam Bondi, among many others associated with Trump. The reality is that this facile act is insulting to those who have sought to help Taiwan and Washington inside and outside of government. In effect, the DPP had a long record of playing footsie with fellow lefties among the Obama and Biden crowd and taking for granted Republican support. Then, once it realized there is an ascendant new right in American politics that is largely indifferent to Taiwan, Taipei decided to throw a bone to some lobbyists it read somewhere are in Trump's good graces.
So 让我来理解清楚哈，川普是去年11月被选上，但是民进党等了快半年，川普跟他们开关税战，才请 consultant 来跟他沟通呢。
Not a great plan.
Now, I'm just guessing that due to the 民进党超极端小彩虹 ideology, that they probably thought twice about approaching the Orange Man's administration. In fact, in private, they were probably talking behind this orange nigga's back on a regular basis. And according to this article, this type of goofy极端 ideology is the main reason behind the breakdown in Taiwan-US relations. Now, I know that there's probably quite a few of you who think that this is completely overblown, 可能有一点太过分, but hold on to your butts and your phone and smash that like button while you're at it, because 接下来呢, I'm about to introduce to you direct evidence that will make your blood boil.
Like her political faction, she is a woman of the globalist left. Inexplicably, her approach continues in Taipei. On July 29th, Lai warmly received the head of the National Endowment for Democracy, Damon Wilson, at the Taiwanese presidential office. Trump has sought to eliminate the government-funded endowment, which demonized him and even had a board member who likened him in writing to Hitler, Stalin, and Mussolini. It is also party to a lawsuit titled National Endowment for Democracy versus United States of America. How could it possibly be wise for Lai to take this meeting and make it so public? Did Xiao advise it? Unfortunately, these mistakes come at a time when Taiwan's image in the United States is poor and declining.
This is a goddamn disaster for President Lai's administration. I'm willing to bet money that it was one of the main reasons the Orange Man Japan refused President Lai's visit to the US. You're in the middle of the most important tariff negotiations that will determine the future of Taiwan's economy, and you decide to take photos and shake hands with the head of this organization that not only called Trump Hitler, but as you're watching this video right now, the man in this photo is also the guy leading the $240 million lawsuit against Trump and the United States. And yet, President Lai is shaking his hand just 3 days before tariff negotiations with Trump were about to end. Bruh, that's like your 前男友命你生日快乐，然后没多久他在 IG po 他新的照片，跟他新的女朋友在一起。但他本来要跟你约吃饭，但他新的女朋友他已经花了5年在说你坏话，差一点跟你打架，但你前男友还想要跟你约炮。
Stop it. Get some help.
And therein lies the true crux of Taiwan's loss of Trump, and why the decayed state will outlast any eventual trade deal. It isn't just diplomatic slights, inadequate defense, and misleading promises, doubts about whether Taiwan will fight the theft of U.S. intellectual property, celebrating what is in effect an Olympic gold medal in domestic abuse, indulging other woke passions and anti-business practices. It is the failure even to seriously attempt to address any of these issues, and an inability to understand and relate to the new right in America. This deficiency cannot be rectified easily by throwing some money at a lobbying firm that may or may not be influential over Trump, and inviting more irrelevant former officials to come to Taiwan to be feted and receive a sash from the president. Trump has effectively brought down the curtain on the globalist post-Cold War era. A new world order is taking shape, one that almost none of the foreign policy and economic experts predicted. It has many actors and moving parts around the world, but at its heart is a new right in America that won't win every election, but is ascendant and will be a political force with which to reckon not only for the rest of the Trump administration and any Republican successor, but for many years to come. It is with this very different environment that Taiwan must grapple, likely with its own revised form of politics yet to be revealed.
Bro, the 民进党小彩虹 ideology seems to have completely ruined any chance of a good interaction with Trump's administration, and it's only getting worse. Well, it seems like the oh so corny phrase "go woke, go broke" is even more true in Taiwan. Now, some of you might come to the conclusion that Whiton is just shit-talking 民进党out of spite, but allow me to remind you of that age-old phrase, do not interrupt your enemy while they're making a mistake. But here's the thing, Whiton is not talking shit, because that's what enemies do. It's those real ride or die friends who are willing to tell you to your face when your shit stinks. And when it comes to Whiton, he is one of Taiwan's most loyal friends. Now, if this were me in 民进党 situation, I'd call this guy up, fly him out, put him in a really nice hotel, treat him real well, take him out to a nice dinner, and maybe hear what he has to say. Because then for Taiwan, there might actually be hope. Otherwise, 代誌多掉咯.
Maybe?
But if the 民进党and its supporters decide to bury their heads in the sand on this article, or even worse, start levying CCP accusations against him, and then start labeling him as an 恶心直男 misogynist, all because he criticized our VP who happens to be female, well, then go woke, go broke will turn out to be Taiwan's permanent slogan, and we're gonna have some very empty pockets for a long time.
Face up to what you've done. Don't take the easy way out.
Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle.
But that's just me. What do you guys think? Am I gonna get canceled by the 民进党 again and possibly have my citizenship revoked? 还是我只是一个很吵老外要关他自己的屁事，回在自己的国家? Leave a comment down below. Remember to like, subscribe, and I will see you on the flip side. Peace.